Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Booch, and I'm with the UN Department of Public Information. It is my pleasure to have you join us for a briefing on the Commodities and Development Report 2017. I would like to welcome Ms. Carla Mukavi, Director of the FAO New York Liaison Office. She's on my left. And then Ms. Chanteline Carpentier, who's the Chief of the New York Office for UNCTAD. With this, Ms. Carpentier, Chanteline Carpentier, you will present the key findings of the report. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and good morning, Carla. Good morning, everyone. This is a pleasure to be with you. Today, we're happy to present a joint effort from FAO and UNCTAD on a very specific topic, which is commodities and development. And looking at the commodity market and then modeling the forecasted prices between now and 2030 and the likelihood of commodity-dependent countries to be able to meet the SDGs. So why is commodity dependence a relevant issue for this agenda? The prices closely correlate with growth and human development in developing countries. Commodity dependent developing countries. That's a hard one. From now on, I see CDCs. That'll be easier. And without policy changes, the low prices that are forecasted could hinder the achievement of the SDG by 2030. So this is the map I've talked about. So basically, you can see the darker the color, the more dependent on commodities the developing country is. And it is mostly, as you can see, a lot of countries in Africa and Latin America that are affected. So why is it so important? Because there's a strong linkages and causation between commodity prices and growth. As commodity prices are very linked to the growth in developing countries, because of the volatility on international commodity market, translate directly through the international market into risk for growth and development. Not going to go into detail, but you can see the GDP per capita is the red line, and an index of commodity prices in blue here, and you can see the two track each other very closely. What are the transmission channel between international price of commodities and these countries' dependence on them? Well, it's first of all from the terms of trade. And this is basically, the terms of trade is the ratio of the price of your export and the price of your import. So if you export commodities, which are low prices, and then you re-import more processed and value-added product, you're going to have your term of trade that would deteriorate over time. It's also affecting your fiscal and monetary policy because if you're an input-dependent commodity country, then you basically, as the price increase, you can import inflation in your country. And also the exchange rate changes affect your capacity to buy from the international market. And it also gives you a lesser policy space in the country to reinvest into education, into health and infrastructure. And it also impacts at the micro level, and we can see that especially in agriculture, and Carla is going to speak a little bit to that. So why are we a little concerned? Because we basically develop a model with our colleagues from FAO and looking at projecting the commodity prices between now and 2030. And as you can see on this graph, the primary food prices project to remain pretty much the same than the 2010 levels. The non-food commodity are projected to grow moderately. The only commodity price that we see increasing significantly is the oil prices. So unlike the past decade where countries have been depending for their growth on high commodity prices, we cannot expect that in the next decade. And therefore, this is why we are recommending some policies to be diversifying the economy and grow the economy. Because then it would reduce the risk associated with commodity dependence and also help promote inclusive growth. So to do that, what we did with our colleague from FAO is to develop 12 case studies, specific case studies at the country level. So we look at Argentina and Brazil with the soybean industry and look at policy choices that they made to transmit to national economy so it could get the benefit from the international export of soybean. We look at Burkina Faso of the reform and to improve the efficiency and competitiveness of the cotton sector. increasing smallholder producers' income. At Costa Rica, we added Costa Rica as a success story of a country to actually diversify its economy to horizontally and vertically. We look at Ghana to the reform of their cocoa sector to improve the productivity and reduce poverty. We look at Mali and the policy intervention aimed at subsidizing import food sector, which are often expensive, and then to help the producers in the sorghum market in the rural development. In Bangladesh, we look at targeted policy and technology to strengthen modernization and productivity of the rice sector, which is improving food security. In Botswana and Sierra Leone, we look at the institution and the policy framework around the diamond industry and diversification around the diamond industry. Then we look at Indonesia and the nickel export ban that was turned out to be a risky strategy to pursue an industrial policy. Nigeria gives us lesson on their work on oil and gas industry, which could have been more successful if it had been integrated in a broader development strategy and not isolated just for the one sector. And then finally, we look at the Zambia and look at economic growth during the copper boom that did not actually contribute to poverty reduction because there was no policy for the redistribution in connection to the rest of the economy. And so based on these case study, what we do come up with are policy recommendation that, to no surprise, are, of course, to build a resilient economy that would be having policies which are counter-cyclical to counter the fiscal policies and the fluctuation in the international market prices and having counter-cyclical policies to deal with those. Of course, pursuing diversification and, of course, good governance. In terms of expanding the linkages of the commodity sector with the local economy, this is moving up the value chain. We talk about adding value, important to generating growth, and also social protection, investing in human capital. And then also to promote inclusive growth, we call for increasing productivity, which is the successful countries have increased productivity through, among other, investment in human capital, as well as in good policies, as well as pursuing transparent policies. So with this, I will stop here and pass it on back to our chair.
Thank you, Ms. Carpentier. Ms. Mukadi, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Moderator. Chantal, good morning. It's really a pleasure for me in representation of FAO to join UNCTAD and, of course, my dear colleague, Chantal Lee, in presentation of the FAO UNCTAD Commodity and Development Joint Report. We are also joined by Hamad Mokhtar, who is the FAO expert, is an economist expert actually in our office in Geneva, who was really part of this report, so he will be also able to connect and, of course, to engage if needed. I would like to stress what actually Natalie has already mentioned, that the Commodities and Development Report points particularly to the importance of a renewed commitment to structural transformation that aims to diversify the economy, and this is really very important, including its agricultural sector, and invest in human capital and social protection. Diversification and promoting inclusive growth will be crucial, and it's really crucial because economic growth alone is not enough to drive poverty reduction and promote food security. So international food prices, and this is what the report also highlights, are expected to continue at 2010 levels in the coming years. Meanwhile, price volatility as a result of climate change and other factors have direct disproportional impacts on the livelihoods, particularly of the poor. And this point is especially relevant from the perspective of agriculture. Lower food prices can limit the flow of cash in rural communities, and reduce incentives for investment. And also abrupt food prices shocks due to unforeseen events can quickly erode incomes of farmers and thus increase poverty. The diversification in agriculture sector has strongly linkage with the rural economy and is really crucial in improving food security and contributing to poverty reduction and inclusive growth. Moreover, policies that can really promote agricultural productivity and invest in social protection, as we saw in some of the cases that were already illustrated by Chantilly. Health and education can really increase smallholder farmers' income and protect them from economic volatility and secure long-term human development achievements. The report also looks at the case studies, and this, of course, we had the opportunity to follow to identify policy interventions that support inclusive growth, poverty reduction, and food security. Allow me just to share some of the key insights from these studies, just, of course, re-emphasizing what Natalie has just mentioned. Expanding the linkages between the commodity sector and manufacturing and services. This can really promote employment and income generation. Improving productivity in the agriculture commodity sector and in commodity dependence development countries can boost small farmers' income and export revenues. Pricing policies that enable farmers to obtain a higher share of international prices can provide an important incentives to the producers. And also promoting inclusive growth is all the more important for countries in which the commodity sector has few linkages with the local economy, as is the case for agriculture commodities produced by large commercial farmers, such as, for instance, soybeans. So let me just conclude by saying that the FAO firms believe that the recommendation presented in this joint report can inform policies that will drive economic growth and make important contributions to eradicating poverty and achieving the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mukavi. Are there any questions? If not, I would like to close today's press briefing. We would like to thank Ms. Mukavi and Ms. Carpentier for briefing us on this report and for everyone here for joining us today. Thank you.